Hey Nerf Herders, I'm Addy Thomas.
And I am Ben Milton.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Certain Point of View. We're exploring the Star Wars galaxy from multiple perspectives, mainly me and Ben. And every now and then we'll have some guests on. But you can check out other podcasts that are part of Certain Point of View by going to our website, certainpov.com. You can check out podcasts like Another Pass with Mace Windu, Scruffy Nerf Herders, a Star Wars D20 story. Then we have also got Funny Games with Matt and Jeff. All of that is on our website, certainpov.com. Let us get into Star Wars right now. We got a little bit of news, not anything crazy this time, but we got some casting news actually for Star Wars Episode 9, and it's rumored that it's about to go into production. Well, Episode 9, the what we're expecting to be the end of the main Star Wars saga, has just cast American star Keri Russell in a role that calls for action-heavy fight scenes. Right now, it's not known whether she's going to be with the Resistance or the First Order, but according to the report, Russell was one of several actresses up for the role, and director J.J. Abrams is expected to cast 2 more actors for featured roles by the time filming starts at the end of the month. Obviously, Abrams and Russell have worked together on his first show, which was Felicity.
I guess... I like this. I like Keri Russell. I think she's really a great actress, and she has that kind of look that she has the look that all Star Wars female leads have, like diminutive, thin brunettes with buck teeth. Like that's like kind of the go-to play. Like, so I think this works.
That was a little too on the nose, Ben.
I mean, they have a type. Star Wars clearly has a type. Like, the only difference is that this one's, we're going back to our roots, and this one's American and not British. But other than that, like, this is fine. Like, we don't. Do you have any speculation of who it might be? Who she might be? Do you think she's playing a character we know, or do you think?
I think it's a brand new character.
Yeah.
I think it's brand new. I've heard people going I've seen the online, just the realm of clickbait has been trying to say, oh, is it Mara Jade? Are we going to get Luke's wife?
That's what I was wondering. Yeah. That's actually what I was wondering. She's
really?
Yeah, she's a little too young for that, isn't she?
Yeah, I think so. Well, yeah, I think so. I think
she
so.
certainly looks too young, whether or not she really is. She's not 50. There's no way she's 50.
You don't think so? I would kind of think she is.
All right, let's check it out.
Maybe. I mean, she's in. So the Americans was the big thing she just wrapped up, and I've heard nothing but good things about that show.
Yeah, people love it.
Yeah. Outside of that, though, I saw her in that one show that showrunner for Mitch. What is it? Mitch Hurwitz, showrunner for Arrested Development, did a show with her and Will Arnett that I liked.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was called Running Wild. That was a fun show.
That was a fun show. She's 2 years younger than me. There's no way.
You're pretty old, man.
I'm not that old. I'm not.
You're not 50 yet?
No. I know I look it, but I haven't treated my body well, to be fair. And she has. So she looks about 15 years younger than me.
That's fair. Yeah.
So no, I don't think she could pull off Mara Jade.
Yeah. I'm 10 years younger than you.
And then
are you saying? Okay, I'm just.
Yeah,
you know what, I'm going to leave that as.
Keri Russell looks 5 years younger than you. Yes, that's the math that I'm doing. That's where I'm going with this, Addy. This is all about you.
Yes, it is.
It's all about your emotional stability, how you look.
I just got a gray hair on my beard.
You're still dreamy, okay? Now, all that is just maturity. The women are gonna love it.
Yeah, the problem is it's just like one stray, like it's not like scattered yet. Like it's just one like
salt and pepper,
assholey looking white hair. He's just like, hey,
pluck that one.
Hey, I just want to remind you of your mortality here, buddy.
Yeah.
When I get a couple more, I'll let it grow out. And
there you go.
Yeah.
It's when it grows on the hair, on your chest. That's when it's not cool.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, that's probably got to suck.
I don't like that at all. So this digressed quickly. Who could Keri Russell be playing? I don't know. I hope that she's playing a somebody in the First Order.
Yeah, here's the thing. I like that idea. I like the idea of her being in the First Order. I like the idea of them giving little bit more character there. Right now it is very one-dimensional, and that's fine. Like they've kind of returned. You and I talking about Last Jedi going into it were really all about the Gray Jedi and the Gray, and there is some of that in the Last Jedi, but it does also kind of reinforce like, okay, there is a good side and a bad side. There is the light and the dark, and they are definitively good versus evil. At least that's what was reaffirmed at the end of Last Jedi. Obviously JJ can take that in another direction in episode 9, but I'd like to see some more characters fill out the universe. I don't need us to keep on getting like the fan wish fulfillment, which is what was one of many things that was amazing about The Last Jedi, at least one of the things that resonated with me about The Last Jedi. But I want them to keep on building out the universe. We want more. I want more characters. I want more. It's a wide universe, and this was one of the issues with the prequels, was that everything was too connected, and broadening out the characters is something that I'm hoping for. So I don't need someone who is connected to Luke necessarily, or connected to someone else we've seen before. That's what I like about Rose Tico a lot, is that she's a character that exists in that universe, and yes, she's heard of these legends. She's heard of of heroes like Luke, and in that short amount of time, even Finn and Rey, and right. Poe Dameron, which was really I really love how they explore that in the novelization of that of The Last Jedi, but getting to see how other characters live in this world is something I'm always excited about. So.
I think it'd be good if we got a new perspective, a new character. I mean, that was one of the things that I really liked about The Last Jedi, was that it did build on the universe. Like, it expanded. Yes, we spent a lot of time with Luke, but we also we spent even more time with other characters. Like, that seems to be the direction that this trilogy is looking at, which is not only we're finding out what happened to our favorite characters, but we're moving beyond it all at the same time, and we're able to find new characters to fall in love with. And I hope that she's part of that. I hope she's part of that tradition of like, oh, this is a new tradition, this is a new character. That being said, I wouldn't mind a Mara Jade appearance. I wouldn't mind a nod to the EU, if she's a character that we know from the EU or something like that, or a character that we've met in Clone Wars or something like that,
that's
whatever.
An interesting idea. Yeah, you know where I'd like more of that though is I want more of that to stick with the cartoons, where we can explore them a little bit more. That's one of the beautiful things about Rebels and Clone Wars, is that Rex is such a fleshed out Rex and Ahsoka and Ezra and Sabine and Hera and Kanan and all like so many other characters that we can name, but like those are some of the highlights of characters that have been introduced to the Star Wars canon and have taken on a life of their own. And right. While they may have started as characters, tangentially connected to, Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan, they came into their own in a fascinating way, and in a way that makes them powerful characters in their own right. So that's just kind of, I think that's kind of what I hope for, with characters like that. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for Mara Jade. I kind of hope if they do bring her in, I kind of would like to see her in maybe Star Wars Resistance instead. That would be huge, right? I like I like what Filoni, just because I like that, not just because I like what Filoni is doing, but I like that he takes his time with how he brings these characters, and he gives it enough room for other people to do stuff with these characters too. Like there's plenty of room for people to play with Thrawn and Ahsoka and Rex and Hera and all like there's still plenty of like there's room for adventures with Kanan, as well, and Sabine, so We'll see what Ezra's fate is, and hopefully somewhere in the next couple of years. But for now, like we'll have to. I'm sure they'll keep that to a minimum. But I'm just excited about more characters in the Star Wars universe.
For sure. Yeah, bring it on. More is good.
So let's talk about a little bit more of the extended universe. So we've been wanting to get into sort of a series of basically covering the Star Wars comics. Right now we obviously we watch all the movies. We're going to watch all the TV shows. We faithfully devoured every episode of Rebels. I think I've watched every episode of Rebels twice now, at least. So we also wanted to bring you the books and the comic books. The books might take a little bit more time for us because reading a book with pictures is far more accessible for us.
We're not smart at all.
But at times we like pretending that we are.
Yeah, we like to use big words to hide it.
Exactly. We've previously on the podcast, we've talked about the Darth Vader comic and the main Star Wars title, and we got up to the Vader Down event, and we even talked about the rest of that first Vader comic, the Kieran Gillen comic. But we're going to kind of catch up on some of the highlights, some of the major stories that have been adapted since Marvel and Star Wars have joined forces in the world of comics. We're going to talk about The Force Awakens, and we're going to talk about the Mace Windu miniseries. In the future, we're going to get to some other adaptations and other spin-offs. And eventually, we'll try to catch up so that as we get new issues, we'll keep you up to date with what's going on in the world of Star Wars and what's being added and what new layers are they bringing to this world. But for now, we'll start with the Force Awakens adaptation. So, Ben, what were your thoughts on this comic adaptation?
This was a really accurate, right on the nose, like take it shot for shot, frame for frame, beat for beat, and just put it in comic book form. Like there really wasn't a lot of extra to this.
Yeah, I was a little surprised.
Yeah, they're really like. It was just an adaptation is what it was. Now, it was really well done. I mean, they nailed it, and I like the art. I like how it was written. It was very well done. But if you're looking for new lore or you're looking for maybe a little insight into the characters that you may not get on the screen, but in written form you might, this is not the place for that. Yeah. This one doesn't do that for me.
Yeah, that was slightly disappointing. I was hoping for, one thing I enjoyed with the novelizations of the original trilogy and the prequel trilogies, there were additional insights. You were able to get a little bit more of the internalization of those characters, and that brought a little bit more to light. I just mentioned in The Last Jedi, we had more of, Rose Tico's, what was happening in her head, and you got a little bit of her relationship with her sister Paige, kind of how that drives her, and her motivations and sort of her self-worth. So you fleshed out that character in a new way, and added it to an already dynamic character even more in depth. You were able to do that with Poe. You're able to do that with Finn. You're able to do that with Luke and Rey and Kylo in really interesting ways as well. I guess I was kind of hoping for a little bit of that in comic form as well. Because every now and then with those adaptations you get to see a little bit of that. But you're right. This was almost a shot for shot remake, which absolutely beautiful. Like that's the kind of thing. Like I think if you want to get it, maybe get if there's a hardcover of it, you want to put it out on a coffee table. That's maybe that's what this is for almost.
Yeah.
But it's cool. But
Yeah, this would totally make a great hardcover coffee book. You're absolutely right. That is the perfect place for this, just to kind of like sit and display, leaf through, and admire the art. You're not gonna like do any kind of like heavy bathroom reading, but you're
Right.
you're gonna enjoy it. Like it's a topic piece.
Absolutely. Well, then let's move on into the miniseries with Mace Windu. So this was very fascinating. We're jumping into the prequel era. We're jumping right into the Clone Wars, pretty early in the Clone Wars, it seemed like as well. But Mace Windu on a mission with which really adds a whole lot more. I don't know if I'd say gray, but definitely some morally questionable ground for what the Jedi Council was up to and what the role they were serving during the Clone Wars. It's always kind of something like they kind of paid lip service to, we're keepers of the peace, we're not generals. But there was a lot of telling. There wasn't enough showing, not instead of telling.
Yep.
Here we got some good showing. We got some good conflict. Like we see how some of the Jedi would even fall away from the Order over the course of this conflict, as we see someone who's very in tune with the Force and someone who's very in tune with what's happening lose faith in the Jedi Order in a huge way, whereas Mace is a little bit more of that, this is my role, I've got to enforce it even if I don't like it type of attitude. And I thought that was a great wrinkle to add to the character, and it's frustrating almost that we never got to see Samuel L. Jackson play that character.
I mean, you get a glimpse of it when he faces Palpatine and wants to kill him instead of take him to trial.
Yeah.
Like you see, like the righteous indignation warrior that is kind of displayed here, and you get a little.
That's true.
You get like sort of a preview of that here, where it's like, oh, like this is the root of where that all stems from. Like his fervor, his unwavering fervor and faith in the Jedi Order is so strong it enables him to justify a lot of things in his head that maybe are good, maybe ultimately aren't. But in his head, he's able to justify that, and I like that. I like that with characters. I like flawed characters. I like characters who, can do things like that. Like, the anti-heroes are usually like my favorite kind of heroes. So to have that wrinkle thrown in for the Jedi was refreshing for me, because you're right, in the movies we've been getting a whole lot of like, it's black and white, the Jedi are good and the Sith are bad. And now we're going back and going, well, it's not always black and white. There is some muddy water here with the Jedi Order, and it's what led to their downfall ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. And the title for this series was Mace Windu, Jedi of the Republic. It was definitely that was such a great title for that. Just showing, like, just tying the fate of the Republic to the Jedi, I think is such an important nuance in this story, that the Jedi didn't take their mission sort of seriously separate from the Republic, but that they tied themselves sort of ingratiated themselves to the Republic and to that political structure, as opposed to understanding their spiritual purpose. Definitely a worthwhile read. It's only 5 issues. It's not an ongoing comic, but it's totally worth it. Definitely got to check out Mace Windu, Jedi of the Republic. Ben, anything else you want to mention?
So, like, do you think when having read this, do you still view Mace Windu as a good guy?
I think he is. Here's the thing. Yes. Because the unfortunate thing is they still never really did enough to make the Separatists, any Separatists, really good guys. Like, even though few that they tried to make a little bit more nicer or, like, morally upright, they did enough to corrupt what they were doing, or they were doing, like, they were ends justifies the means type of people. So I think it was, what was it, Clovis? I think there was the senator who was close to Padme that they did that with. So like, yes, the best they got was making them as morally gray as Mace, but at the end of the day, they still were like, all right, we're still about making sure the Trade Federation and these planets can make money the way that they want to, and we can make sure we can, capture planets and force them under our control. Like they made the Separatists pretty evil. Like there was not a lot of like there was.
But just because the Separatists are evil, that doesn't automatically make the Jedi good.
Yeah, but So here's the thing, like,
and not even the Jedi, but just specifically
the Republic.
No, specifically Mace Windu.
Yeah, see, that's a tough one for me.
His religious fervor blinds him to a lot of that. Like next to Yoda, he's the guy that's running the entire Jedi Order.
But he's like, you still sort of have him fighting for certain good ideals, and while it's very flawed, don't get me wrong, like
he's also sort of an ends justify the means kind of guy, right?
He is so, like, trust me, there's plenty wrong with him, but let me put it this way. So backtrack it a little bit, you're talking about when he's not willing to take Palpatine to trial. He's like, I gotta kill him here. Like, there is a practicality of like, this guy's a little too dangerous. Like, like when you're watching it in that moment, you tend to sympathize with Mace on that, and you're kind of like, yeah, this guy has been weaseling his way out of everything. He's smart. This might be the guy you have to execute right here on the spot. And that is a very wrong thing to say, but like,
I mean, that's very anti-Republic.
It is, but what's and it does, but like, when you're thinking in that moment of it, like, do you think like, okay, like, we got to make sure he go? Do you tend to side with you got to go to trial, or like, how bad Palpatine is, like, we got to get rid of this threat? Like, what's your, like?
I mean, me personally,
right?
No, I think, like, if you say that you
like, do you think that Palpatine needed due process?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, if you say that you're the the keepers of the peace, and that you are working for the Republic and you're fighting for the Republic, killing him instantly weakens the Republic.
Yeah,
and gives credence to the Separatists and gives credence to everybody else. Like,
yeah, and you get into this whole issue of a coup, and
you've got to do due process.
Yeah, I think
that is the arrow in the knee of of a lawful society, right? Like, yeah, like, we all know that guy is evil, that guy is bad, we'd like to just get rid of him, but that's not, we still have laws, we still have rules.
Yeah,
and for a guy like Mace Windu, who is all about the laws, like, he will not grant the rank of master to Anakin because Anakin doesn't check all the boxes for him, right? So for him to be like, yeah, well, I'm going to break the rules here for this guy.
Yeah, and it's not the Jedi way. And
there's a lot there.
There's a lot to unpack. And I think I think that does strengthen that moment, especially in retrospect. I think from a storytelling perspective, what makes it tough to side against Mace in that moment is, Palpatine's winning, and Anakin's going down the wrong path. So it's hard to like to look at Mace and be like, you're definitely. It's hard to look at that and point the finger and say you're wrong here when the other side of it is.
Well, the brilliant thing of it is that Palpatine's completely manipulating that.
Yeah.
That entire moment, Palpatine's completely
looking vulnerable,
manipulating. Yeah, shooting the electricity back onto himself, and being tortured, and having Anakin witness the leader of the Jedi Order breaking the Jedi code and rules, like, just so that he can further cement his position with Anakin is brilliant. is really brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why, yes, you're right. He should be killed right then and there. It shouldn't have been a thought. But at the same time, like, you know, you if you're fighting for the Republic and the ideas of the Republic, you just can't do that, man. Like, that's not okay. I think this does a great job of, like, kind of reopening that question of Mace Windu. I remember early in the prequels, when we saw Mace and the purple lightsaber and stuff like that, there was a lot of talk about how Mace could use both the light side and the dark side.
Right.
You remember that?
Yep. Technically, that's canon.
Right. So, like,
because they even pointed out in this comic series.
Right. Well, I guess, like, you know, so my question is, how do you let a guy who can use the dark side of the Force on the Jedi Council
and not let Qui-Gon in because he's a little too much of a hippie?
Well, I always kind of got the impression that Qui-Gon just, like, said no, he wasn't interested.
Yeah,
like that wasn't really his bag. But yeah, I don't know. That's one thing that's always kind of bothered me a little bit about Mace is, like, well, why is this guy on the Jedi Order? Like, I get he's wicked powerful, but dude, he's using the dark side of the Force. Like, what is that about? Like, that's as close as we get to a gray Jedi is Mace Windu.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I don't know what to make of him, and like this comic book opens up a lot of those kinds of questions of, like, okay, like, where is he morally? Like, was he just a tool that Palpatine put in place this entire time?
You think so?
For that moment? I mean, it's possible that Palpatine could have orchestrated that. We don't know. Like, there's nothing to suggest that.
Right.
But, you know, to put a guy who can use the dark side of the Force on the Jedi Council that you could have sway over using the dark side of the Force that he taps into, you could easily manipulate him.
So here's one thing that's sort of troubling in terms of the nature of the philosophy of the prequels, that I think has been they've corrected in the sequel trilogy. And it's the sort of the definition of light and dark and what sort of fuels that. Because I guess in original trilogy, I think this comes through, is that ultimately the light is about love and that the dark side is about hate. And what's sort of muddled in the prequels, I think, is... And you can take this to obsessive love instead of just pure, you know, well-meaning, like, not well-meaning.
Selfish love. It's selfish love. It's not selfless love.
Right. That Anakin's unwillingness to let go, to let the course of things happen. But it in a weird way, it sort of says, well, love is kind of can be a bad thing. So... And it doesn't, you don't get into quite the nuances of what that love is. So one thing that I really like about The Last Jedi is it kind of restores the idea of, like, okay, love versus hate again is the core of the light versus the dark. What does that mean for Mace Windu, though? You know, what kind of emotional... Like, what does that mean emotionally? Like, I think they're...
How is he tapping into both?
Right. And I mean, here's the thing. At the end of the day, like, it's a purple lightsaber because it's Samuel L. Jackson and
wanted a purple lightsaber.
Yeah. Let's be honest. And yes, we've jumped through hoops to try to make this fit in. I think that's one of those things that may... You know what? Like,
it's better left unanswered.
It might be, but it also might open up some very interesting debates. Like, I think... Without that debate, like we have I do think we have an interesting conversation. I think, though, it starts extending outside of this love versus hate metaphor.
Well, yeah, I don't think it's because I don't think that it's hate. I think it's fear.
Yeah.
For Anakin, I don't think it's hate for him, and in the prequels, it's fear. You know, like fear leads to anger, and that's kind of what
anger
you
leads
see
to hate, and he hated the
anger.
Tusken Raiders.
Yeah, all of them.
He made
the women
that clear.
And the children too. Yeah, and sand. He's not a fan of sand.
That's right.
But you know, like fear is the thing that really like starts that path for him. He's frightened, and they talk about that in the Jedi Council of like there's a lot of fear in this kid, and that's why they don't want to train him. So what is it that Mace Windu is tapping into that allows him the access to the dark side of the Force? Is it fear as well? And he just controls his fear? Is that his thing? Is like, you know, he has this righteous path that he takes and but how does he still tap into the dark side? So
that also creates a very interesting discussion about how we use our emotions, because, you know, you and I know, like, especially like when it comes to like success principles, you know, yes, will should be about, you know, knowing why you're doing something and who you're doing it for, and with a very like clarity of vision, right? You know, this idea of will, you know, and ideally it's something out of like goodwill, out of hope, and, you know, compassion and love. But then, and I'm bringing my, you know, rainbow core from the Green Lantern spectrum into this. But, you know, it is possible to channel ambition, which can be also turned into greed. You know, it's also possible to channel fear of being in a certain place in life to be a successful person. There's such a thing as a righteous anger as well. You know, is it these forms of these emotions that can be very volatile? Is that, maybe that's kind of what we're looking at here with this, you know, Mace Windu's use of the Force, that sometimes things.
Maybe here's the difference between him and a Sith, whereas a Sith gives into it and just gives himself over to the fear, the anger and the hatred.
Right.
Mace was able to compartmentalize it, such a hard word to say, and just like he didn't give into it. He just recognized it was there and he used it in the same way that you're talking about. Yeah, like you were saying, like, you know, like the fear of failure can drive somebody to do great things. And so maybe that's how he manipulated his fear and his anger, was, you know, to do something positive with it, which I don't know, like that seems like kind of
a cop-out.
Yeah,
it does to me too. But I think it brings up an interesting discussion.
You think more people would be able to do that.
But you know what's interesting about emotions like those aren't. I feel like those aren't things that you can do long term and still be successful. That those provide you like certain, you know, like maybe
short-term bursts.
Yeah, exactly. Like whereas something like love and hope, which can also be very like, while they have, you know, love, hope, and compassion are things that can have long-term value for you. Sometimes they're not enough for you to make that short-term, you know, action. Like sometimes
that fits into what they say about the Jedi and the Sith, is that the Sith give you short-term, quick access to powers, but in the long run, the Jedi are stronger.
Right.
Over time.
Right.
So like that kind of fits into it. So maybe you're right. So maybe he used the dark side for like short-term gains, but then like built his powers long-term at the same time using the Jedi side, the light side.
Yeah, and I guess the thing that's tough about something like this is like right now we're speaking like, you know, we're talking like, you know, sort of the psychology and philosophy of Star Wars. But the reality is, like, as dynamic people, like, we have moments of anger and we have moments of love where they, you know, they create weakness and strength for us all. And maybe that's where we need to come back around to. I think that's what makes the scene with Luke in the throne room at the end of Return of the Jedi so poignant, is that you experience that range of emotion where he has that compassion for Vader, and he starts out trying as hard as he can to not give in to the dark side. But as soon as you mention his sister, he goes nuts. But then fortunately he doesn't go so far. He's able to recognize what's happening to him, and he's able to bring that discipline to him. Like, I don't see that as a fall to the dark side, but yet there is that moment where, you know, he's using the dark side.
Being tempted. Yeah, he's certainly being tempted.
He's definitely lashing out in anger in a good portion of that fight, you know, but it doesn't mean he's fallen either, you know. And I think that's sometimes I think maybe we're getting a little too obsessed with, you know, sort of the dichotomy of what is the light and dark side in Star Wars, that we're also forgetting the range of sort of how humans interact with each other and the natural emotion that you kind of also feel. And in the course of all the storytelling, since it is mythology, since it is, you know, a matter of telling lessons, maybe, yeah, it doesn't answer like how Mace Windu could be on the Jedi Council. But
I still like that theory that somehow Palpatine orchestrated that.
Yeah, that would be fascinating,
because Palpatine, like, Mace Windu is the best duelist. Right?
Yeah.
Especially that come to confront Palpatine. And when Palpatine goes and he kills all the other Jedi, like, he leaves Mace alone.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He doesn't even take a second to take out the others.
Right, yeah. And he's just like, okay, well, like, if you're going to try and kill Mace Windu, you want to get the jump on him. You don't want to wait until he's ready for you.
Right.
Why didn't he go after Mace? Maybe he knew and had orchestrated for Mace to be there and to confront him, and because he knew Mace's righteous indignation and his anger would allow him to bounce that electricity right back onto Palpatine,
right,
and manipulate Anakin.
Yeah, that I do assume that he was waiting for Anakin. It's interesting with this, like, your idea that maybe, like, Mace is the one he wanted all along to be there. That's some impressive foresight there for sure. And Palpatine has proven that he's got it, you know.
For sure. And again, like, if you want to have some influence on the Jedi Council, who better than Mace Windu?
Right.
I mean, like, that makes perfect sense. Like, that's exactly who you'd want. The guy who regularly taps into the dark side, isn't so afraid of it that at the first sight of it he'll try to kill it or to run from it, but can slowly and over a long period of time be manipulated by it.
Right.
I mean, we've seen that happen lots and lots of times in fantasy and novels and video games and stuff like that, of, like, just touching the darkness one too many times and eventually, like, it gets you.
Yeah, that is true. That's a fascinating perspective on that too. Kind of like the way I guess you also have what was it in Doctor Strange? You had the Ancient One drawing on the dark dimension.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah. Yep.
And
that's headcanon for me now. That is absolutely headcanon for me.
I like that.
I am talked out of it. That is absolutely headcanon.
Well, I think we'll leave the conversation there. If you have any other thoughts on sort of the nature of Mace Windu and his powers, and, you know, sort of who he is within the Jedi Order and on the Jedi Council and in the Republic, be sure to check out this comic series. It's definitely worth it. It's only 6 issues long. Be sure to check that out, but also be sure to talk to us on social media. Let us know what you think. All of that you can find on our website, certainpov.com. And while you're there, be sure to check out what we do on Patreon, because if you really enjoy this podcast, or have others that, you know, enjoy this podcast as well, we would love for you to be a part of this, and you can find different levels of contributing through Patreon. See what you're comfortable with, if that's something you'd like. Again, that is on our website, certainpov.com. And until next time, stay scruffy, my nerf herders.